Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the webinar Radical Social and Technological Innovation. This is the fifth and final webinar in the digital version of the Energy Transition Conference, organized by the Energy Transition Initiative at NTNU, the Norwegian University of Science and Technology. My name is Ruth Astrid Sæther, and I've had the pleasure of moderating this webinar series, which replaces the physical conference, which was due to take place in March. Now, during these webinars, we've looked at the energy transition from various angles. And if you haven't had the chance to attend these webinars or would like a repetition, you can find recordings of them at the Energy Transition Initiative website. Today, it is time to talk about innovation. This important keyword describing new creations that sometimes may be completely disruptive and other times just be new ways of adapting well-known solutions. We are going to look into the entire ecosystem of innovation and discuss how we can increase the success rate and scale of new innovations. What makes one startup succeed and another one fail? What are the barriers to innovation? And how can social and technological innovation change the transition and the future of energy? Lots of questions, and if you have some questions as well, please don't hesitate to ask them. The way to do that is, as usual, through our interactive platform Slido. As you can see on the screen now, you just have to take out your phone or a tablet or your computer and open a browser. You write slido.com, and today's code is ET Innovation. In this forum, you can comment and ask questions, and the most important feature within this forum is the like button. It's not a popularity contest. It just helps us to get the most relevant questions up, because if you see something that is relevant to you, click like, and you should also do that if you see that this question looks a little bit like the one that you had yourself. That is going to help me out, so I don't have to read through the same version of, well, one or several versions of the same argument several times. And also, the more likes a question or a comment has, the higher up on the list it pops. So that's pretty genius, I think. And I'm going to do my very, very best to convey all the questions to the speakers, because we have a Q&A session after each presentation. And we also have a panel discussion where you are more than welcome to participate. If you would like for a question to be raised during the discussion, you can mark it debate or discussion. That's going to make it easy for me as well. Yeah, maybe we should just get started. If anyone is troubled by a tiny noise in the background, it's my computer going wild, backing up files. I don't know why, but just let's skip that. So, I once heard that behind every successful idea lie 1,000 failed ones. If that is true, it is easy to be discouraged, because making your way from idea to creation and then to success is not a straightforward route. But if someone else believes in your idea, you've already taken a big step. And if that someone has a bit of capital or a big network of potential investors, or the experience of an entrepreneurship, or even better, a combination of all these factors, then this someone could be just the helping hand your idea needs. Diego Pavía is that kind of helping hand with muscles. He is the CEO of InnoEnergy, a company aimed at accelerating sustainable energy innovations. With the EU as an important sponsor, to quote Diego, InnoEnergy helps startups and scale-ups, offering them an entire ecosystem of and for innovation. My boss is my portfolio, Diego says, and he has lots of bosses around Europe. He is himself an experienced serial entrepreneur, and he's now going to let us in on how they work at InnoEnergy, and more importantly, what lessons they've learned after 10 years of business. So with that, I'm going to leave the digital floor to Diego Pavía.
Good morning. My name is Diego Pavía. I am the CEO of EIT InnoEnergy. I would like to share with you today in the NT and New Energy Transition Webinar 5 the track record of InnoEnergy as far as supporting innovation is concerned and the lessons learned. As you can see in the title, since 2010, we have been scrutinizing around 5,000 innovative cases in sustainable energy. We have been investing and supporting 450, and today 300 of them are doing well commercially. So which kind of investments and assets we're investing in? If we plot here what is the energy value chain, on the right side, what are the European objectives in terms of CO2, renewable penetration, and energy efficiency, then as you can see, we are a very CapEx intensive investor. Examples, Norvolt, that is our first unicorn, that is a gigafactory that's going to produce 32 gigawatt hours for the electric vehicles industry in Europe. It's the first European endeavor in this compared to the Asian ones that are being located today in Poland and in Germany, but that's a purely European one. Today, the value of Norvolt is around $3.6 billion, and we only started the whole endeavor back in 2017. We have Hyde Hyperloop. That is the way we believe that we are going to travel between cities in Europe, where today's flight is around 1 hour. So, for example, Amsterdam, Berlin, in 2026, there will be cargoes already going in those Hyperloops, and for people will be in 2030. So that's mostly tomorrow. WindFloat. WindFloat is the first 3 times 8 megas for offshore wind, floating offshore wind. So as you can see, the portfolio of investments that InnoEnergy has is pretty CapEx intensive, most of them. So industrial unicorns coming up the line, contributing to the EU objectives. And how we do this? We do this because we have developed a trusted ecosystem of partners that is covering most of the energy value chain. We are trading in 21 countries in Europe, so we are extremely present in the field. Today, we are 250 executives that are supporting those 300 plus assets in sustainable energy. And we're extremely anchored in the European landscape. So we are, although we are a company, we are also a public-private partnership, meaning that we have one leg in the public sector and one leg in the private one. And we're measuring the impact that we do as a company. And the title of this panel is about radical social and technology innovation. But what's important is the impact on the key objectives of the Paris Agreement. That is the abatement of CO2, that is the penetration of renewables as a mean for that goal. And of course, is what are the savings in terms of energy efficiency. And this is a contribution of our portfolio of ventures by 2025 to those goals. Just as a reminder, Europe, we emit 4 gigatons of CO2 per year, 4. So InnoEnergy, by the IRIS methodology, we contribute to abating 0.3, that's a 10%. So it's quite impressive. So that's our track record and how we're contributing. So now about the lessons learned that we have had over the last 10 years about how to support successfully entrepreneurs. And as the first slide was saying, we are all about making the cases happen earlier, bigger, and de-risked. So the first lesson learned is that today, the innovators that we see on the left of the slide, they need all those services to make their business case happen. It's not only about money, it's about all the other services. Market intelligence, to find customers, to build their supply chain, to be able to deliver the products, and so on. And to get to those their partners or services, then they have to engage with a supplier number 1, a supplier number 2, number 3, number N, and number X. Meaning that each innovator needs to manage all those interactions to make their business case rounder and happen. Our lessons learned is that we have to go from a supply-centric relation of the innovator with the ecosystem to a innovator-centric. So the same needs are there, and the same suppliers of those needs is what you see in those bubbles of several colors. What we InnoEnergy do is that we are the one that is taken by the hand, the innovator, and together with him, making the journey between his early stage maturity to their IPO or their trade sale. And the interaction with all those suppliers is happening through us, together with us. So the innovator just focus on what they need to do best, that is to progress in their technology or in their business case, and we deliver the services across our ecosystem for themselves. Again, from supplier-centric to innovator-centric. And this is one of our key successes, and that's why innovators come to us. They can accede all the services through us, that they are all of them anchored in our innovation ecosystem. So we are the one-stop shop for all the needs of the innovators. That's the first and key lesson learned. The second key lesson learned is that as far as how we assess and progress into the maturity of a case, in the early stages of the innovation value chain, research, applied research, and a bit of innovation, normally the world uses the technology readiness level created by the defense guys in the US. That's the way to assess whether you have gone to maturity to the right levels. Our lessons learned is that when you go to the next stages, to the innovation stages, then you need a much richer way of assessing and working on the maturity of the case. It's not only about technology, it's also about all the other dimensions. And linking to the title of this panel, it's about society and consumers also. I mean, you can be extremely good and mature in technology, in manufacturing, in IP, in the market, but if you are not good enough, not at the maturity level of CRL, consumer, and society, then your innovation will not get to the market. The best example is the famous NIMBYs. I mean, everybody agrees that onshore wind is good, but nobody would like to have the windmill just 5 meters from the house because it's aesthetic-wise is not good, and second is noisy, right, in low frequencies. So again, to address very early in all the cases all those dimensions and to progress in all those dimensions to get to the highest level of maturity in all of them is key for having the innovation becoming a product that is bought and acquired by the customers. And finally, I would like to share with the audience 3 proposals to make the energy transition happen earlier. And all of them are low-hanging fruits, in our understanding. So we start again on the innovation value chain, and which will be those 3 proposals to make that happen smoother for all the ecosystem, but especially for the innovators. First one is innovators, they are looking many times to the supply side money. Hey, please, I need equity, I need grants to progress in my innovation. Well, we believe from InnoEnergy that the demand side money, so having customers, is much more important. It is the customer that is fully at the hand of the public administrations, that instead of printing new euros to have supply side, what about what the public administration is buying for hospitals, for transport, for all their needs, having innovative products being purchased. And if we take the numbers, in Europe, there are 240 billion that are procured, taking out the labor, that are procured as far as energy services is concerned, transport included. If only 30% will be geared towards innovative products, so innovative procurement, there will be 75 billion euros of fresh money every year to drag those innovations into the market. And this is what the innovators want. Let's remember that one of the successes of the US and Israel is that the defense sector is playing that role, that they are buying the products coming out of research innovators for their own needs. So that's the first proposal. The second one is that on the B2B, the energy transition is working. So the business to business is working. The both parties of the transaction, the business as a supplier and the business as a demand, they know the rules of the game, they are performing well. But on the business to consumers, one part of the transaction is us as citizens, us as consumers. And I must say that we still have a long way to go to engage the citizen, not only as a transaction, as a member of the transaction, but also as somebody that is fully appropriating the energy transition as something structural and not just as a good or service to purchase. In InnoEnergy, we are working, as I said before, in the innovation readiness level in this dimension because it's key for the uptake of the B2C, business to citizen energy transition services and products. And finally, is about having one market and not 27 markets. The first thing that we do when we assess whether to invest or not in innovation is to paint the colors of the regulations for that given market design, market need in all the countries in Europe. If there are too many colors, we do not invest, because then we'll not have a 500 million potential customers of the service. We just have 27 different. They will have different regulations, that have different go-to-markets, they will have different specifications. So we only invest when there is one color for that given product in the European market. And that's, again, it's not as easy as the other two, because the other two are pretty much at no cost, but this is about being clever and smart. So to have a one European market and not the fragmentation. Again, it's a 500 million potential customers homogeneous. And that's what, again, innovators want, is many customers of the same homogeneous kind. So we have covered in my presentation the credibility of InnoEnergy as an engine for innovators, the two lessons learned about from supply-centric to innovator-centric, and from TRL to innovation readiness level, and then the three proposals that are on the screen. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Well, thank you very much, Diego. You said bye-bye at the end there, but you're still with us, I hope. And I know that you travel a lot around Europe. Where are you at present?
I'm in Madrid, in Spain.
You're in Madrid, yeah. So you're back home in a way. That's
Yeah.
good. Well, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. And I would like you to elaborate a little bit on these three proposals that you came with. I do get the first one with public procurements, which sounds relatively easy. Shouldn't go too much in depth on that. But what do you think is the major challenge when it comes to having clean energy with all Europeans? You were talking to business to citizens approach. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, and also say a bit more about how it's possible at all to have one color in the market fragmentation or no fragmentation? Big questions, I know, but we have a couple of minutes.
Yeah, so on the second one, on the famous involving the citizen not only as a user, remember that up to 2015, 14, we as citizens, we just had one choice. So basically, we were users, we were not customers. Now we see that we citizens, we can play the role of a buyer of energy, a prosumer, also creating and feeding into the grid. We can also play the role of investor. So it's much richer. So the way to bring us citizens as a force into energy transition, so it will make it become earlier and faster, is by changing the paradigm of the user as we were as a profile up to 2015 into this richness of different profiles and functions into the system, as we say now. And for this is a lot about awareness, understanding. It's not easy to understand, and to bring us in. That's number one. On the fragmentation, and the clean energy for all Europeans is that the Commission drove extremely quickly between 2016 and 2019, and still pulling new directives. It's giving a extremely good frame for the next 10 years, for the next decade. So it's giving certainty. But some of them are regulations. So overnight, when Brussels decides, then they have to be implemented in the countries. Others are directives that requires to be then translated into each one of the countries. So again, there it's to bring the countries as soon as possible into the design process. So when the transposition to the countries has to be done, then it will be with the lowest deltas of change. That's the way to go, I would say.
It sounds like a pretty long haul, I think, getting there.
Well, it is, but we better fix it right, because if we get it right, then we'll develop technologies that, because of the size of the market, we can become export industries. So it's not only about energy transition, it's also creating industries that, by a strong demand market of 500 million in Europe, can become export industries into the future. So it's a lot of win-wins around there.
Yeah. So there are a couple of questions from the audience, and the first one, I did hear that when you were talking about the innovator, you said him. And this question is a gender question, of course. How many of your innovators are women, Diego?
So the statistics tell us before I go to the gender, it's about the age. So the average age of our innovators is between 40 and 45. Surprise? Well, not so much. Why? Because energy is a systemic issue. It's not about technology, it's about understanding the system. So that's why most of our innovators that are successful, I mean, the heavy ones, the CapEx, as I said in the beginning, ones, they need to have an experience in the real life to be able to find innovations that will make the system more efficient. Then on the gender side, today we have growing, but today is lower 10s, so 9% women, and high 90s, high 80s, sorry, men. Yeah.
So women, we just have to scale up in a way.
Yeah.
And this is an interesting question, and you only have a tiny fragment of time to answer it, actually. To what extent do you think that scaling up your innovations can be negative for sustainability?
Zero, because when we identify where to invest, we only invest if there is a CO2 impact abatement, if there is a lower cost of energy creation, and if it's penetration of sustainable energies. So scaling is all good news. It's not against speeding up the energy transition at all. It's vice versa.
Okay. Well, thank you very much so far, Diego. We're going to meet you later on for the panel discussion. So we'll just say bye for now and see you again in an hour or so. Okay, thank you. Now, let's move from the big innovation accelerator to a specific company that is first and foremost known for its 50 years of expertise and experience within oil and gas exploration and production. It started out as Statoil, a Norwegian state-owned petroleum company. Today, Equinor markets itself as a broad energy company operating all around the world. And they do invest as well in new value chains and new solutions. Equinor Ventures performs Equinor's corporate venture capital activities and has done so since 2016. Their vice president, Gareth Burns, joins us today from London to give us an insight in how they think and plan when considering where to put their money. Now, if you have questions for Gareth after his presentation, please use Slido, and the URL is still slido.com, and the code is relatively logical today, ET Innovation. It is time to leave the digital floor to Gareth Burns. Take it away.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be able to join you this morning, even though I'm forced to do so from my home here in London in the UK. I have the honour of leading Equinor's corporate venture capital activities, which is an integral part of our engagement in the energy transition. Equinor's corporate strategy is captured in the words always safe, high value and low carbon. And this forms the foundation on which we invest in and support innovative companies as we look to shape the future of energy. As part of our investment toolbox, we deploy funds through direct equity investments into privately held companies, through early phase project funding, and through engagements with financial funds, accelerators, and incubators. In particular, you may be aware of our cooperation with Techstars through the Energy Accelerator that we host in our Oslo office. The energy transition is progressing at great speed, in part because the climate challenge we face requires rapid changes to the global energy mix. Corporate venture capital activity is a very effective tool to explore new value chains, and collaboration within the startup ecosystems will accelerate the energy transition further. Participating in those ecosystems enables us to get insight into the novel technology and business models that will, I believe, over time become increasingly important. As a corporate VC outfit, for us to really deliver significant value creation for Equinor, it's important for us to implement the technologies into our activities multiple times. Equinor Ventures was established in June of this year when we brought together the technology ventures and energy ventures activities within the company. As a corporate VC, we are looking to invest in radical and potentially disruptive innovation across 3 different investment pillars. And we've labeled these 3 investment pillars: enhance, expand, and explore. Under the enhance investment pillar, we are looking to invest in opportunities that will improve our existing operations in one way or another. This enhancement can be delivered in a variety of ways: by delivering a better safety performance, by increasing the value of our business through revenue additions or cost reductions, or by improving the carbon footprint of our activities. In order to deliver this enhancement, we'll look for multiple implementation opportunities across the full range of our activities, whether that be oil and gas, renewables, development activity, and operations. Within the oil and gas category, we'll be particularly interested in investment opportunities that can improve the carbon efficiency of our current oil and gas activities. The second expand investment pillar covers investments that give Equinor the opportunity to test future growth options. In this category, there can be implementation opportunities within our business activities, as well as options to grow our existing businesses. In addition, there can be occasions when we're able to learn about new segments that could be valuable add-ons to our existing renewable and low carbon solutions business. In the third explore investment pillar, we are looking to make investments in high impact business and technology solutions that will give us strategic insight into the future development of the energy industry. These investments will tend to be in areas that Equinor has yet to take a material position, and are also likely to be in companies that have the potential to be particularly disruptive to current energy activities. Historically, Equinor has made a large number of investments in companies that are focused on the upstream oil and gas industry, and in recent years we've become more active across the energy transition space. In the coming years, our expectation is that a much greater proportion of our new capital investments will be targeted towards the energy transition and are likely to be within the expand and explore investment pillars that I mentioned earlier. To give you a little colour on our investments, I'll now move on to talk about a few companies from our current portfolio that are relevant to the energy transition. A number of years ago, Equinor saw the potential to improve the carbon footprint of our activities within the offshore support vessels that are an essential component to the production of oil and gas. In order to help accelerate the electrification of this segment, we invested in a company called Corvus that is now one of the leading suppliers of safe, innovative, and reliable energy storage solutions across the maritime industry. As a result of our investment, it gave the ventures team the insight necessary to work with the relevant Equinor stakeholders to develop a framework that would encourage the use of hybrid solutions to power the supply vessels we would use in our oil and gas activities. In competitive processes, Corvus was successful in winning the tenders that enabled it to grow its business within the oil and gas offshore support vessel segment. As a result of this initial success, Corvus has now expanded its activities further, whereas it is able to supply solutions to a broad range of business segments relevant to the maritime industry, including the cruise and ferry segments, fishing and aquaculture, to name just a few. Another investment that's particularly relevant to the energy transition is Chargepoint, that was also in the news last week. Chargepoint is one of the leading electric vehicle infrastructure companies developing smart charging solutions that enhance the electric vehicle user experience, whether that be a private consumer driving a personal vehicle, a fleet manager managing a large number of delivery vans or trucks like UPS or DHL, or a fleet of public service buses. In the case of Chargepoint, the investment has given us direct insight into the continuing ramp up of electric vehicles across multiple electric vehicle segments and geographies, and how the entire segment has the potential to disrupt the demand for one of our core hydrocarbon products. It's also given us valuable strategic insight into how we should respond to these market developments. In addition, the public market news from last week is a great demonstration of how corporate venture capital can also deliver an excellent financial return on our investments. I look forward to participating in the panel discussion and taking questions from the audience on Equinor's venture capital and broader corporate activities, as well as how we will continue to participate in the venture capital and innovation investment space. Thank you, and back to Oslo.
Thank you very much, Gareth. Thank you. There you are again. Good to see you. Thanks a lot for giving us this little insight. And I was just wondering when listening to you, in Equinor, you have like 21,000 employees. Why do you have the need to invest externally in, the brain capacity out there?
Very good question. One of my strong beliefs in Equinor as well is the importance of collaborating with people across the whole industry to solve some of the challenges that we as a society face in providing energy for society's benefit. And as such, if you think about 21,000 employees, that's a very small proportion of the world's population. And there are many great ideas out there that we want to try and tap into. And I think if you look at a number of different sort of academic studies that have been done, there are a lot more ideas come from outside than from inside a company.
That is true. And what about the budgets, the numbers? Because I don't recall you mentioning any amounts of money that you are putting into or tapping into these different innovations. Could you give us a ballpoint figure?
Yeah, you must have been listening carefully. We, as I mentioned, and I think as you mentioned in the introduction, the Energy Ventures Group has been running for about 5 years, and with the creation of Equinor Ventures, we are just sort of re-evaluating our future plans. Our expectation is that we will look to increase what we deploy. If you look at sort of 2019, we deployed probably $70 to $80 million, and our expectation is that that will increase in the years to come. 2020 has been a challenging year for all of us. And so again, we've been working with our portfolio companies. We've continued to invest through them, and our expectation is that our investment level for 2020 will be somewhat similar to previous years, but also helped by some of the news with the likes of Chargepoint last week that actually hopefully will enable us to return some capital to Equinor.
I was looking at your portfolio, as it were, of May 2020, because I think that is the most recent one that you've published on your website. And when I was looking at the number of companies that you do invest in, the majority still lie within oil and gas. I could count 23 logos under oil and gas versus 17 in total when it comes to low carbon and power. And you did mention in your presentation that you are probably in the future going to see, if I understood you correctly, leaning more towards the low carbon and power, or at least exploring new possibilities. When does the day come when Equinor Ventures no longer invests in activities linked to upstream oil and gas, you think?
That's picking up on a comment in Slido from one of our audience. And I think as an energy company, we are an active participant in the energy transition. and we are looking to deploy the majority of our venture capital expenditure towards that energy transition. However, the world will continue to require oil and gas for a number of years to come. And as such, we are looking to, as I mentioned in my introductory comments, we are looking to reduce the carbon footprint of that oil and gas activity and also reduce the cost of that oil and gas activity. And so as such, we will continue to make sort of isolated investments where it makes sense for us from a cost perspective, or where it can make a contribution to improving the carbon footprint of our oil and gas activities. As to when that time point will come, when there's nothing in the portfolio, sort of if I knew that, I wouldn't be here.
Okay, great, thanks. So with that answer, you've actually replied to several of the comments in Slido as you've been following. I can tell, and that's good. And we can come back to that as well for the panel discussion, because I can see that precisely these things are interesting for the audience. But there's also a question about what types of technologies that are particularly interesting for Equinor at the moment. Could you say something in short about that, please?
Yeah, so obviously we are scanning the market continuously. You started the webinar with behind every successful idea there's 1,000 failures, and behind every single investment we look at over 100 potential investments. And then we then wait to see which of those are successful. So in terms of current technologies that we're interested in, sort of anything to do with the energy transition, so to do with hydrogen, to do with carbon capture is quite interesting for us. You may have seen or heard of one of our investments that we made earlier on this year, which was in Commonwealth Fusion Systems. Again, that is something quite radical, has the potential to disrupt oil and gas significantly. Then other areas we are interested in mobility, and then also sort of anything that has a digital or sort of AI or machine learning component that could either improve what we do or change what Equinor does is of interest to us.
Good. So we'll hear more from you later on, Gareth, because of course you're going to participate in the panel discussion as well. So I'll just say thank you so far. Looking forward to hearing from you again.
See you later.
See you later. Now, after hearing about the considerations that investors do when looking at new business opportunities, it is time to meet one of the innovators themselves. What are the main challenges a startup faces, and how do you scale up, struggling your way through the valley of death? Knut Johansen, he is a serial entrepreneur with 25 years of experience from the energy industry. He has, amongst others, invented or co-invented the world's first market-based IT systems for power exchanges and trading systems. Now he is the CEO of EsmartSystems, actually one of the companies that has received support from Equinor Ventures. And their product is software that through artificial intelligence monitors power lines. Now, Knut, he claims that starting things, that's relatively easy. Growing and scaling up, however, is much more challenging. So how to survive, to flourish and succeed? What are the typical errors to avoid? I believe Knut is going to give us some hints on that. And if you have questions for him, just continue to ask him questions through Slido, as you're doing so well already. The code is still ET Innovation. And with that, I'm going to leave the screen to Knut Johansen.
Thank you so much for the invitation to the webinar today and for the opportunity to share some experiences about new technology and innovation with you. My name is Knut Johansen, CEO of EsmartSystems and the founder of the company. What I would like to talk about today is a quick intro to EsmartSystems, and then how we transform workflows by using AI-based technology. and also a little bit about the product development we focus on, the market technology adaptations and minimum viable business product, and also the beachhead market approach we have, and finally a conclusion. The three circles you see here is the way we focus when we develop AI products in eSmart. First of all, we ensure that we have enough detailed knowledge about the domain. In eSmart, we mainly focus on inspection of power lines now, and it's extremely important to have available the domain, the subject matter experts with deep insight and experiences connected to inspection of power lines. And secondly, we make sure that we prepare all the data from the flights, from the drones, for example, where we collect images and also all type of data, and we add on synthetic data if we need that, and make sure that we enrich the data and do all the data AI ready. And finally, we do the analytics by using the machine learning algorithms we have in our architecture. We have a prominent group of investors with us in eSmart: Equinor, E.ON, Kongsberg, and Energy Impact Partners in the US, and also Nysnø Klimainvesteringer here in Norway. If we move into the way we focus when it comes to transforming workflows and use AI for that in utility power grid operations. This video shows the outcome from that operation. Here you see a drone flight, and you see we have collected data, and we have done the analytics on the data. We are able to detect all the components in structures you see here, and also defects, even very small defects like rustic cotter pins, for example, or even missing cotter pins like you see here. Even if the images are very blurry, we are able to detect that type of defects. But this is not enough to have a product ready for inspection of power lines in the industry. So we also need to add on quite a lot of new functionality, manual functionality, or supporting functionality for the AI. And what you see here is one example where we connect the images to real structures and in the power grid. And by doing that, we have available all kind of data, technical data, for example, connected to different type of equipments, or historical data from maintenance work, for example. And we are again able to connect the images to the real objects. And the next step then is to start the what you call the manual annotation, where you use the manual functionality in the system for annotating the defects and the objects in the images. And the third and last part of the main process here is the outcome from the algorithms. Here you see defect as an output from the algorithms. So this is a flashed insulator, and you can validate or invalidate that type of findings. And by doing that, you also improve the training data into the algorithms. So what you see here is the process. First, it's all about capture asset data and import the data into the system, and then do the analytics. And the green arrow here is the manual part of the process, where subject matter experts inspect the images and then use the manual functionality in the system for correcting kind of wrong detections from the algorithms. And by doing that, prepare for the next iteration of training. And so it's a continuously improvement of the outcome by having this process in place. If we look at the development I have been through now in the market context, we started with the AI part, where we focused on AI only, and we had a lot of projects together with the R&D departments in utilities, for example, or innovation part of the utilities, where we tested the technology and developed some kind of examples so we can use it, as I showed in the beginning here. But this is the next step then. Was very, very visible for us when we faced the reality in the US when we signed the first contract with the real grid operation. And we had to add on a lot of new functionality for being able to support that reality, that type of inspections. And the last part of the development here is all about merging the two first stages, two first developments here, and develop the so-called collaborative AI, where we have merged the AI with manual functionality and optimized that for the user. So the chasm here is where we have the real danger for companies like Esmart. Quite a lot of companies, scale-up companies, are not able to avoid that chasm, but it's all about bridging that gap and understand that you in reality have two completely different customers on each side of the chasm, from the innovation part and into the reality, so to speak. So what we have done then is to develop the so-called minimum viable business product, where we have developed enough functionality to be competitive in that part of the market and be a market leader when it comes to that type of new technology. And we have selected our beachhead market in US and Europe, where we have a list of prominent customers we try to sign contracts with and be a market leader by focusing on that part. What you see here is a practical example of from a real inspection in the US, where we have inspected in the time period you see here about 56,000 towers and 5,500 miles. And we have also analyzed 1.2 million photos and detected about 10,000 defects. So this is real data from a real operation, and where we have used the AI-based system in that context. So for Esmart, it's a very, very good development. So what you see now is that we are able to reduce the maintenance, the OPEX part of the costs. We are able to reduce failure rates, and we are able to extend asset life with this type of product. So what we have seen when we have tried to capture this market by using the AI-based product is that it's not enough with pilots or proof of concepts or point solutions. You need to focus on transforming end-to-end workflows, like inspection, a holistic view on inspection, for example, from the field activity into the results from and the results from the system, where you can make decisions based on the outcome from the system. And it's also important to avoid the kind of big bang implementation of that type of systems. You have to do it in an agile way and step by step, but not too small, insignificant step. It need to be steps count, so to speak, when it comes to the real cost reductions and the benefits. So finally, it's again, it's what we focus on is collaborative AI, and it's not about displacing employees. It's all about giving your employees superpower. That is what we focus on. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Knut. So yeah, it was a very nice image that you finished off with there, with the superpower, Superman and Superwoman. I really like that. Now, you've described, you know, the entire process, and I was just wondering, because you were describing that you have different clients in a way on each side of this gap. How then the solution to me, it seemed to be, you know, you just have to show potential clients that the end-to-end workflows is the best way to go. And there's a question from the audience that I can link to that. Are utility companies eager to start using these new types of solutions, or are they a bit slow?
Yeah, it's in a way back to the product maturity curve and across the chasm. I had in one of the slides there where you see that you have kind of startup customers where they focus on the innovation as such and the technology, and they very much like to work with machine learning and test the technology, all that. And then you move up the curve and into the early majority, for example, or the late majority, where you have more and more customers on board. It's different type of customers. Some are risk averse, some are kind of focused on references, for example, but in the beginning, it's always the innovative part of the market and the early adapters that kind of start using that type of applications. So it is, when I talk about utility market, it is a slower market if you compare with quite a lot of other markets due to the fact that they are physically oriented, they have power plants, they have transmission and distribution grids, and you can't really compare them with a kind of typical Silicon Valley tech startup and the way they scale their business, because they have a lot of barriers they need to take into account when they try to change the business. Also, their regulations, for example, is a part of that.
Yeah, that's another part of it, which could be an entire webinar in itself, I think. But also, what you're describing is the difference between, you know, big physical infrastructure and maybe a more technological oriented industry in a way. You showed us shortly some of your investors, and there are big investors. How important is it to have these on board when you are struggling to get from, you know, the innovative side over to market and scaling up? And is timing a bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And if we start with the definition of a company like eSmart, we are an innovation-driven enterprise, and that means that we try to have enough funding to meet the hockey stick curve when the market take off, and that is the whole idea with that type of startups. And of course, if it's a strong correlation with the investment and the funding and the crossing the chasm curve you saw earlier on in the presentation. If the market kind of is slow and if you don't see the kind of more and more mature customers, of course you will run out of cash and struggle a lot with that. So it's very much about the timing and be able to connect the funding with the market maturity, so to speak. So it's in reality all about having investors on board that understand that situation and are willing to follow up based on the kind of the risks and also the delays you quite often have when it comes to that timing.
So how would you say you're doing today at EsmartSystems?
I think the situation is very, very good. We have signed with some of the best customers in the world, the leading customers when it comes to focus on this type of new technology. And it's no doubt that using AI in the industry will be a standard when we move forward in time. So what we see now is that the practical approach we have here, by changing the whole kind of value chain when it comes to inspection, it's something that will be a standard in the industry from 2, 3, 4 years from now. So in that context, it's a very, very good situation.
That's good to hear. And Knut, we're going to see you again later on for the panel discussion. I think we should just stop here. And I know that for the panel discussion, we might hear something about the environment that you're actually sitting in Halden in Norway, where I know that you are establishing on your own an entire ecosystem precisely for startups and scale-ups. So maybe we can get back to that as well later on. So thank you so much this far, Knut Johansen.
Thank you.
Now, so far, we've focused mainly on the technological side of innovation, but what about the social perspective? Who are the innovations for? To what extent are we as consumers, users, and citizens adapting to new technology? Or could we even influence the way technology develops? Eva Heiskanen, she is Professor in Sustainable Consumption at the Consumer Society Research Center at the University of Helsinki in Finland. Most of her professional life, she has been interested in energy and environmental issues, and in particular linked to the consumer and the consumer's role in the energy transition. A key word for Eva's presentation here today is living labs, and I'm curious to hear how they can contribute to the transition. If, once again, you have any questions or comments to the presentation that we're going to hear, you could still ask questions through Slido, and the code is ET Innovation. And with that, I'm going to hand the word over to Eva Heiskanen.
Hello, I am Eva Heiskanen from the University of Helsinki, and I have been asked to speak to you about living labs, so thank you very much for the invitation. I will talk about the contribution of users to radical social and technical innovation. And I would like to start by going into the prehistory of living labs, so into the contribution of users to the creation of many important developments and industries that we see today. Passive house experimentation, local solar experimentation, and local wind power experimentation. So if we take as an example the passive house experimentation, since the 1970s we have had architects, individuals building and trying to build passive houses for themselves, failing, making improvements, contributing to a line of development that has led by 2010 to the onset of the European Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, which requires that all new buildings in the EU should be nearly zero energy by 2020. Experimentation in real-life conditions has also been important for solar power development, especially activism and experimentation by citizens in Germany and California. Local wind power experimentation by citizens in Denmark, and these both have resulted in the huge industries that we see today. So users have a critical role at the early stages of technological development, and living labs are an attempt to simulate and accelerate this type of development of innovation under real-life conditions, often launched by cities, large and small companies in collaboration, with the aim to explore how users and technologies interact in real-life settings. And they do definitely provide valuable information about users and their needs for technology developers, as exhibited in this nice poster card by ENOL, the European Network of Living Labs, which says, don't assume what people want, find out what they need. And most living labs subscribe at least to a co-creation rhetoric, which allows users some opportunity to influence technological direction. But you might also argue that living labs can serve to reify and consolidate existing lifestyles and technological complexes, by which I mean the tendency to focus on one category of technical solutions, digitalization, automation, rather than others, or rather than challenging them radically. And as an example, I have a living lab that has now been running in Helsinki in a large high-rise building, which you can see in the slide, where they have been testing the use of a robot courier, which picks up ready meals and snacks in a supermarket, which is located within that same building, and delivers them to residents living higher up in that building. And you might say this is perhaps a little overkill. You might also question if this is the best way to deliver this service. I understand the need for home deliveries in these difficult times that we are living in, but could we find other simpler solutions to this problem? And this is what I mean by practice-based living labs that actually aim to challenge shared conventions and fixations with particular technologies. And the foundation for this is the questioning of right, normal, and convenient ways of doing things, which we usually take for granted, such as you must have Christmas lighting on your home. Very soon we must be putting it up. Your children must have lots of hobbies, and when you have visitors, you must offer them something nice. And very often, living labs tend to search for solutions to these problems, perhaps rather incrementally. So you might have experiments where you're searching for a sophisticated control algorithm to control the LED Christmas lights. You have 3D printers to make cupcakes. And I don't know if we have this yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we were to develop a robot courier that delivers the tiny ballerina to practice. But this is based on a notion that we have an expanding needs and expanding basic standards that everybody must then follow in their consumption patterns. And this is a bit problematic given that our planet is not expanding and we have planetary boundaries that set limits on how much we can consume. So as an alternative approach, I would like to show you Energize, a radical practice-based living lab that I was involved in through a European project, where we aimed to question and challenge existing practices of laundering and thermal comfort in households. And how we did this, we deliberated together with the participating households on why we do laundry, why we heat the way we do, and what could be alternative ways to do this. On this basis, our experiment didn't involve lots of complex gadgets, so we gave people thermometers. Surprisingly few households actually have even one indoor thermometer, woolen socks to keep warm, brushes, airing equipment, aprons to avoid the need for laundry. And we had 360 participants in a total of 8 countries. They were very engaged for a long period of time. We had 1 month of baseline data collection, 2 months for the households to experiment with alternative practices, and 3 months for a follow-up period to see if people actually kept up with these practices. The results, on average, households reduced their indoor temperatures by 1 degree Celsius, which can be roughly translated into 5 reduction in heating energy demand. They did 1 wash less per week, resulting also in less energy demand for drying clothing. But most importantly, participants saved time and they felt comfortable in their new indoor temperatures. So I would like to leave you with the question on the basis of this example. Could future living labs be even more radical? Thank you.
We are about to meet Andreas Martinsen and Simon Riesager. Andreas, he will tell us about Ocean Access, a project that was done by master students at the NTNU School of Entrepreneurship. Simon, he will present the project Trondheim Dynamics for us, developed by PhD students from the Department of Industrial Engineering and the Department of Electric Power Engineering, also at NTNU. Both these projects were awarded with the Energy Transition Innovation Award in October last year, a prize that was initiated by NTNU and Equinor. Andreas and Simon are not with us live here today, so there will be no Q&A session afterwards, but if everything works okay, we're going to have a short Q&A with Eva instead afterwards. So now it's time to lean back and listen to our fresh innovators. Please roll video.
Hi, my name is Andreas and I'm one of the founders of Ocean Access. We're a startup from NTNU working with remote ocean monitoring, and we're developing an ocean data buoy that is fully submersible. So the challenge that we're working on is, how do you communicate from the ocean and the seabed far away offshore? And how do you send this data and information from these locations back to us here on land? So for remote ocean monitoring today, you have 2 options. You can either physically lay a cable out to this location, or you can use an ocean data buoy that is moored to the seafloor and that can transmit this information via satellites. And this is the closest to the solution that we're working on. So these buoys, since they are operating on the ocean surface, this means that they are constantly exposed to extreme wear and tear from waves and wind. And the cost associated with materials and design for something that can handle this is very high. And even if you build these buoys to be really tough, you always face the risk of meeting a big wave that is tougher. Particularly in the North Sea, this can be a major issue. And especially under low visibility conditions, these buoys can impose a risk to marine navigation. So this is where we want to introduce an entirely new solution for remote ocean communication and underwater monitoring. We're developing an ocean data buoy that is fully submersible and can travel up and down the water column. This means that it can be submerged and lowered down underwater, where it's protected from the rough environment on the ocean surface, but can also, when needed, be programmed to rise up to the ocean surface, where it can then connect with a satellite and transfer data to land. We see that our solution can be used across different ocean industries, including site surveying in, for example, the offshore wind industry. But particularly, we hope that our solution can be an effective tool for ocean data collection and help to increase our efforts in ocean science, which is very much needed moving forward. So we started on this project last year while we were studying for our masters at NTNU, and was fortunate enough to be granted support to our project from Equinor through the NTNU Energy Transition Initiative. Since then, we have gotten a lot of support from Equinor and have been working with them to develop a solution for environmental monitoring and subsea leakage detection. So here our goal is to offer a solution that will increase operational autonomy, make the oil and gas companies less reliant on manual ROV inspections, and also improve the monitoring of subsea oil and gas wells. Equinor's support so far has been extremely valuable to us, as they have continuously provided us with feedback along the way while we're developing our solution. And so this has been a great way for us to learn and gain market insight from a company and people who have been in this business much longer than us. In addition to covering prototyping costs, this funding from Equinor has allowed us to further develop our IP strategy and conduct a professional patentability assessment. And we are now currently in the process of filing for a patent. So my co-founder and I, we graduated from NTNU this summer, and we are now working full-time on ocean access here in Trondheim. So if any of you who are listening is interested in learning more about our solution or want to use your knowledge and experience to help us succeed, we would love to hear from you. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you to both Equinor and the initiative for the support. Thank you.
Hey everybody, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Simon Risanger, and I'm going to talk to you today about the project Trønderdynamics that I'm doing together with Markus Løschermann. What we're doing is to develop software for real-time production planning and bidding for renewable energy producers. If we look at the trends in the power system, we see that renewable technologies are getting mature and cost-efficient. However, the same technologies are also uncertain in their production, meaning how much and when they produce depends on external factors like the weather. At the same time, we observe that fossil fuel technologies are decreasing. These technologies pollute, but they're flexible in when and how much to produce. These trends are also expected to continue in order to reach environmental targets set, for instance, by the EU. This introduces two main challenges. Firstly, from the perspective of an energy producer, how can you operate your renewable asset as profitable as possible when you have uncertainty both in your own production and market prices? Second, as a system operator, how can you facilitate as much renewables as you can in your system when you require a constant balance between production and consumption? And this becomes increasingly difficult as you get a larger share of variable production into your electricity mix. Today, most energy is traded in what's called a day-ahead market, where you make your bid of what you want to produce the next day. This creates an information gap between when you make the bid and when you actually deliver the production. And this can become problematic for renewable producers. Most European power exchanges, however, also support what's called real-time markets. These markets allow you to change your position within the day, and as we can see, the European intraday market, which is a real-time market, has increased its volume as more renewables have come into the market. However, making bids in these types of markets are more challenging because there are more factors. Will people accept your bid? You have a lot of price changes, and also you have your own uncertainty. And this problem is what we try to tackle with our product. We use a state-of-the-art technology in order to, one, represent the market environment and uncertainty in a thoughtful and representative manner. This is then fed into an algorithm that are able to learn profitable strategies. The end result is a product where a producer can feed in its most recent information, and the algorithm gives feedback on what is a profitable strategy. As the producer gains new information, it's able to feed it back in and adjust the strategy in real time. This work is based on a research done in my PhD and Markus Løschermann's PhD. We also have support from a strong technical community and business community at the universities and the NTNU. Our goal is to make renewable producers as profitable as possible. This makes renewables a more attractive investment. It also helps when renewables can balance themselves in the market. It creates a less imbalance for the system operator to handle, which means that you can facilitate more renewables into your electricity mix. Going forward, we're going to continue to work on developing this product. We have started a cooperation with the Norwegian hydropower producer, and also we gained support funding for commercialization by the Norwegian Research Council. By that, I thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you very much to both Andreas and Simon for giving us that useful insight in their project. So I'm wishing them the best of luck with the continuation. So now I would like to call on Helsinki again. Hopefully we've managed to solve the sound issues for Eva. Are you there? There you are. Now, could we have a tiny sound check and see if your new microphone is working better, or the new browser, so to speak? Eva, you're muted, so you have to unmute yourself, or Eirik will have to do it from Trondheim. We'll see. I can see that you're talking, but I can't hear you, unfortunately. It's so
now
typical.
double. Now can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. So,
okay, thank you. Yes.
Well, thank you. I'm very happy that you're back online and that we can both see you and hear you, because I would really like you to elaborate a little bit on your own question, whether living labs could be even more radical. And as I said before, I do suspect you to answer yes to that question, but how?
Yeah, this is a very good question, and I was thinking about this question also when I was listening to previous presentations. So I understand that it is a difficult thing to go outside one particular technology. People's expertise is built up in one technology, and also for investors, it is important to recognize what kind of a solution is being invested in. But still, I would argue that as society, we should try to solve these problems. One example, very recently here in Helsinki, we have been training dogs who sniff out people who have COVID-19, and they are very cheap, they are very reliable, and this is not something that many startups have been thinking about. And I understand that people's expertise is not maybe in training dogs or animal veterinary science, but what you might consider is who you collaborate with. Not only collaborating with people in your own field of expertise, especially in the living labs, but considering a bit more outside the box. Are there solutions in biology, in social innovation, etc., that could be more perhaps more to the point, that could be cheaper? Also, many people here probably read Clayton Christensen and the importance of considering the unserved customers, not the underserved, but the unserved customers. Okay. So could we serve some of the unserved customers in the world?
So what you're saying is that we shouldn't jump to any technological new solution just because it's technological, but it has to have a meaning, and we could also sometimes actually find the right solution within a not so technological sphere.
Yeah. Or a completely different technological sphere. So indeed, biosciences are another technical sphere, and they might also have some solutions. So that was my argument. So I'm not arguing that you should all offer people woolen socks, but rather to think various solutions. Yeah. Also because the competition is often coming from another field than your own.
There's an interesting question from the audience, Eva, that I would like to ask you. How do we define relevant needs? how can we create radical innovations that make us understand that we do not need all the things that we think we need?
Okay, that is a very good question. And of course, needs are culturally determined and they change over time. So if you would ask today if which are more important, pants or jewelry, then I'm sure everybody would say pants, but actually jewelry is a much older innovation than pants. So in a sense, it is always culturally defined. But I think that indeed a living lab can be a good place to explore people's needs and what people consider to be fundamentally important about a certain solution and what could be perhaps like secondary aspects of that solution. So whether, for example, we need the same temperature in every room, or if we are happy with a warm and cozy living room and different temperatures in different rooms. This is an empirical issue. It is also something that varies from one culture to another and varies over history. But we can learn by working together with users.
Yeah. And with that, Eva, I think we're going to stop our one-on-one Q&A session here because we should enter the panel discussion now. So just stay on camera and with the sound, the microphone on. Thank you so far, because there are other questions for you popping up as well. Now, I would like to thank all of the speakers and also the two students for very interesting presentations. And it is time to discuss what we've heard today. And I would like for the three other speakers to turn on their cameras and then, well, wait a little bit with the microphones just yet. So all four of you are there, perfect. And I noticed there's a fifth person present, and I'm going to tell you, oh, he went off again, but that doesn't matter. Anyways, I would just like to remind you that you as audience can also participate in this discussion still through Slido, and the code is ET Innovation, as you know very well. And as usual, we have our experts with us too. You just saw one, he's coming back. Today we have two, one in Denmark and one in Norway. And since GoToWebinar has a limit of 6 talking heads at the same time, I'm going to absent myself visually quite soon so that you can see the 4 speakers and the 2 experts. They're much more interesting to look at. So I'm going to ask Marianne Thellersen to join us. And she is responsible for the innovation and entrepreneurship efforts at the Danish Technical University, the DTU. So Marianne, if you can turn your camera and your microphone on. And while you do that, I'm going to introduce the second expert that you just saw in a short glimpse. That's Roger Sørheim, professor within entrepreneurship and the founder of the NTNU School of Entrepreneurship Master Program. So welcome to both of you. I'm going to absent myself visually now, but you can still hear me and I can hear everything that's going on. There we go. So Marianne, are you there?
I'm there, but somehow my webcam won't show me. So
it's not going to show you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's too bad. I've been looking forward to seeing you all morning.
Yeah.
Well, we'll hear that.
They say it's some kind of, you know, whatever security thing. So
of course, yeah, it's maybe the COVID pandemic turning up.
Probably. So you will have to make do with my voice. Then you can go back on if you want.
Well, I'm back on. I was hoping that I could be off screen for some time, but anyways, you're stuck with me. So, but Marianne, we've heard you, and I would like you to challenge our speakers first, because I guess with your background, you have lots of questions popping up and comments, not to say. So, who would you like to challenge first, and with what? Go ahead, Marianne.
But I think actually a broad challenge to all of you could be, so Diego, you talked about systemic innovation in the beginning. And as all of us know, changing the energy system takes a lot of players. So it takes both technical solutions and social solutions. So how do we make this play better together? Because it's easy to talk about systemic innovation. It's really difficult to do. So I challenge any of you to give a bet on that one.
Who wants to go first? Diego, you were mentioned. Maybe you would like to start, but I would like for all of you to comment on this big question.
Yeah, so my short answer to a very difficult question is, again, back on the experience of the last 10 years, the only way that we can address systemically the change is by 4 dimensions. Number one is to have an ecosystem of recurrent players that whether they benefit from a current innovation today or not, they will still be around playing ball and contributing. And that's what we have been doing for the last 10 years. And today we have an ecosystem of around 500 institutions in research, business, universities, public administration, blah, blah, that are playing ball. And because those 500 are the multipliers, that's the way to make it systemic. Number one. Number two, regulation, as I said, but I'm not going to repeat myself. Number three, the investor side of things. Today, we are in Europe, and I repeat myself, but just a bit. Today in Europe, we're too much depending on the supply side money. In case we want to be systemic, we also have to bring the demand that is yes, that is the public demand into the game. I will stop there on those 3 things.
I know, Gareth, you would like to comment on this, wouldn't you?
Diego's taken my comments already. We need governments and regulators to encourage. We need investors to deploy capital, and we need consumers to buy the products and services that are being made available. And I think we need all 3 of those working together. And when I say consumers, that can be commercial companies or it can be individuals.
Eva, I saw that you were nodding. Would you like to comment a bit on the same question, and also with the consumer side of things? How conscious are they of their role in this transition?
Yes, I think I really appreciate Diego's comments, both about the recurring players and about indeed being too much driven by the supply side of finance. So I very much agree on these. How aware are consumers? Well, of course, they many of them understand that they have a role in climate change, but many do not know about all the solutions and options available. So I would like to link now the answer to this question to perhaps what was discussed before. For example, we have had a big market for solar PV for single family homes. And that has been a good market, and everybody has been happy about this market. And we have had a good market for supermarkets and also perhaps emerging supermarkets and office buildings. But multifamily homes have been a bit problematic, so everybody has just avoided this market rather, except if it's a new building where it's helping to meet the nearly zero building energy requirements. But it is a very interesting, it is a potentially actually very lucrative market for the owners. It can make a lot of sense if you are allowed to distribute the electricity to your neighbors or among the neighbors. So it can be a very good market. How to push entrepreneurs to try to enter this market, and also to make sure that legislation allows for this kind of energy communities. Well, we already have the Energy Communities Directive that is helping a lot, but how to force entrepreneurs into this new market, which is a rather large market in many parts of the world.
Diego, you wanted to comment on that.
Yes, to put ourselves on the spotlight. If today we had to raise ourselves, the speakers or the audience, how many of us are driving electric or plug-in or hybrid? And how many of us have refurbished our homes with PV and storage? Then the result will be very gloomy. I mean, maybe not for the Norwegians, because you Norwegians, you are ahead of the curve. But I mean, when we preach to the choir, I mean, we are not leading the pack. I mean, we're telling people what to do, but ourselves, normally, we're not leading the pack. So it's a bit more about the doing and not talking that much. But again, normally when we're meeting physically, in the past, I always put the same question when I start my pitches. And the result in the audience is extremely gloomy.
Okay, well, Knut, you are in this sense, a doer. What do you think when you hear the others here responding to the question from Marianne about the systemic change and how to do it? You're muted. You have to unmute yourself and repeat the beautiful start, I'm sure, of your answer.
Sorry. Yes, I think one of the key questions when it comes to that type of local market is the regulation. That you are able to establish a good structure for exchange the power with the rest of the system, so to speak. It's a well-developed market when it comes to the wholesale market and that part, but the kind of local islands and the local markets connected to the as kind of sub markets is not good solutions yet for how to handle those markets. So I think that that connection to the established markets and also the right incentives for households, for example, to buy the PV panels and use that. We need to focus also on the market structure and the regulation on that part.
Marianne, are you satisfied? Would you like for some more elaboration on this before we go over to Roger for a first question?
Well, I was actually maybe looking also for what you talked about, Eva, that we need people to collaborate across different kinds of silos, because it is a very difficult system. You have all the corporate players, you have the startups that need to collaborate to get difficult technology out, but you also need to have the consumers along and the regulators. And I was also wondering, none of you are mentioning these kinds of, app solutions and different kinds of nudging solutions to the consumers. Is that something that, for example, the startup companies should be thinking about when they are doing technology?
So Eva first, then Knut could also have the same challenge. And I know that Gareth also have something he would like to add. So Eva first.
Yeah, thank you, Marianne. Thanks for reminding. And I very much agree that definitely nudging, for example, what is the default solution? What is the first option that you meet when you meet a new service or you meet anything at all, a new product or service? That is very important. And that is something which I know tech companies have been putting more and more effort on over the years. So compared to what it was previously, where we were getting really horrible, ununderstandable like printouts or screens about our electricity consumption going up and down, it is more processed, the information is framed better. We could also think about what is the default option. I think that could influence how people approach our technologies, what is assumed about what they want and how we can change those assumptions, as well as the social aspect that we often follow other people's example. So that is very important when developing new solutions. What kinds of examples relating indeed to what you were discussing, for example, Knut, what different customer segments, how can we find the appropriate exemplars, the appropriate opinion leaders, so that they're not too far away from the customers that we are targeting? So I think these are very important, and I'm really pleased. Thank you, Marianne, for raising them.
And Knut, would you care to answer that? I mean, to what extent do you have the consumer or the societal aspect of things when you're working with your solutions?
Yeah, it is differences if you compare the B2B to B2C, of course, but it is also a connection there. For example, the reality that you need to, if you start with a technology, you need to find the best possible way to use that technology, and that challenge is also something we see in all startups. I see that you need to connect to the reality and start with today's situation and see, okay, what kind of improvements can you do with your technology? But yeah, it's
good. So Gareth, did you want to have a comment? And I can see Diego's raised his finger, so we're going over to him afterwards.
Just a couple of reflections on what some of my fellow panelists have commented upon. Picking up on Eva's comment earlier about multifamily, and also Diego's comment, if you ask the audience and look at ourselves. My wife and I are renovating a house that hasn't been renovated in 40, 50 years. And it has been an enormous challenge for us to get approval to put solar panels on the roof, to put an electric vehicle charging point in. We live in London, multifamily, like there isn't an option for us to have a dedicated parking space. And I think that's where in cities, there's a big onus on the regulators to actually keep up with where consumers and businesses are in terms of their the products and services that they're looking to offer, and to be able to facilitate people who want to contribute to addressing the climate challenge we face. The other comment,
if I could just ask you, Gareth, is this a local regulation problem, or is it more of a central and systemic problem, you think, for the UK?
I think it's a combination of both, and potentially on what Diego was saying, it's not isolated to London or the UK. It's something that is across Europe, and I've worked for a Norwegian company for most of my career, and Norway is very progressive in that way. But actually enabling companies to deliver their services to the consumers that are looking for those, I think, is something the regulators need to facilitate. I think the other element to pick up on a question was directed to Knut and how he responded. I think the business-to-business area is quite different to the business-to-consumer. From an energy perspective, the consumer doesn't really want to engage with energy. They want to know they've got it and they've got reliable supply and they can forget about it. And it's up to people like eSmart, who are active in the business-to-business segment, to make it easy for people to ensure, or for companies to ensure, that the services are available as and when the energy consumer requires it. And so again, I think we need to have slightly different perspectives depending on what segment we are looking at.
Diego, you're nodding, and I can see Knut wants to comment again. You're going to get the comments afterwards.
Yeah, a quick provocation to the panel and audience. So fully agree with what Gareth just said. And in the past 10 years, we have tried to drag the citizen into the game by the price signal. Hey, we're going to give you all the nice apps so you can control your consumption price, blah, blah, blah. Well, price signal for me is not the way to go. And also why? Because you see already today utilities that they are offering flat tariffs, like in telecom. So no matter how many kilowatt hours thermal, kilowatt hours electric that we are using, you will be paying a lump sum monthly. So the price signal is gone into the objective, price signal, then I can consume and pay less. And for me, this is going to be the future, that the utilities, they're going to save money by not having all those meters, people, blah, 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 and they're going to offer flat fees like telecom. Because you're not going to heat your house more or put more lights just because. It's so I think that we have to bring the citizen into the game with another appetite than just the price signal.
And that, of course, is an important societal side of things. So thank you for that, Diego. Knut, you raised your hand before Diego said what he just said. So maybe you would like to comment on both.
Yeah. If you look into the system today, you have different price areas in Europe, for example. And that means that you have congestions between price areas. So and that again means that you need to work with flexibility. That if you have bottlenecks in the grid, you need to balance that with the flexibility, and you use the market for doing that today. If you look into the local part of the market, there you have the same situation, in fact. And that situation will vary from region to region. And for example, if you add on EV trucks in the Norwegian system today, you don't have enough capacity in the distribution grid to handle that. And in that context, the value of flexibility will be much higher than you see today. And again, then you bring in the market to balance and to trade. And back to what Gareth said, if you believe that customers or end users or households will be a part of that market actively, it's totally wrong. It's no way. So you need to do that in an automatic way, and be the structure around that. And that's not solved yet. So we need to work with that to be able to have a good structure for doing that type of balancing. It's all about flexibility and the value about when it comes to flexibility, and that value will increase when you introduce more type of electric ferries, for example, or electric trucks, as I said. So it's a lot of development we see in front of us to reach a good platform for the green development.
Well, thank you very much, all of you, for elaborating and answering fully to Marianne's question. But we have a second expert in our panel as well, and Roger, he's been silent and patient for quite some time and listening carefully. And as I mentioned, he is a professor within entrepreneurship, so this is a field that he knows a lot about. So, Roger, what do you think? What is going to be your challenge to the panel today?
I will start with a direct challenge or reflection towards Gareth. And maybe this is a little bit provocative, because when you presented the Equinor venture, it sounded very much like business as usual for you, in the sense that I didn't really see that you were taking on the role of taking the leading role when it comes to radical investments in radical innovation. So what do you need from your owners and maybe also from governments in order to take a more forward-leaning role to take us into this energy transition?
Thanks for the question. I'll initially sort of push back on the suggestion that it's business as usual. I have been working in the energy transition side of the business for the last 5 years. And so, yes, it is business as usual for me as I'm continuing to look at the energy transition. But that is quite different to what Equinor has done for the last 50 years. So in terms of our investment in eSmart, I think Knut was 2017 when we made that initial investment, and again, that has been progressing nicely. In terms of what I'm looking for from the company, Equinor Ventures has strong support to the highest levels of management. They're committed to contributing to sort of the energy transition and fully participating in that. Our investment, I would actually point to our investment earlier this year, where we invested in Commonwealth Fusion Systems, where it is quite a radical investment for an oil and gas company to make, because the system that Commonwealth Fusion Systems are developing has the potential to do away with the need for oil and gas completely. Whether it works, it's a relatively high risk investment, and we'll need to see what happens over the coming years. But we are investing significantly beyond our core activities. And I'd also come back to the comment I made in my introductory comments at the start of this webinar about in Chargepoint. We invested in Chargepoint back in 2016, and we saw the potential we saw how electric vehicles were sort of ramping up, and due to the proportion of our revenues that are related to transportation, it was important for us to get some insight into how that was developing and how we could continue to participate in that. So in terms of what do we need from companies, we've got the support we need from our management. What we need from governments is and others is basically we're looking for reliable investment conditions. and we're looking for the ability to sort of deploy capital in areas that we believe are going to shape the future of energy. So it's ultimately up to us to make the wise decisions on where to deploy that capital and then ensure we learn from that.
Thank you.
Roger, I noticed that Knut raised his hand while Gareth was replying. Could we allow him a short comment before you continue?
Yeah, interesting question, Roger, and I'm happy to have Gareth and Equinor as investor, and we are one of the portfolio companies. And I would just like to add a comment connected to the type of investor you can get and you have in a company like Esmart, and what you prefer, and what Equinor has as a company is a lot of operational skills, experiences, and that part, for example, operating windmills, operating platforms, or even grids. That part combined with the venture part is a very, very strong asset when you want to move a startup to a scale up and help a company like Esmart. So that's another dimension if you compare it to a completely kind of a pure venture company with just capital. So that is one of the big advantages I see in companies like Equinor Venture and Eon Venture, for example, which is also investor. Just a very short comment.
Thank you. Roger, I know that you had at least one other question, don't you?
Yeah, and thank you, Knut and Gareth. And this is a little bit my point, to let you say something about what you actually are doing in this field of more radical things. And Knut could be a witness of that they are doing. So that was good for Gareth as well. My point is, when you see this mission-oriented public policy coming in, that we really need to go faster and further, then we maybe need a more support also from the government to make this transition into these technologies, where maybe the government is the actor that benefit the most from an investment. So there's something there to discuss about the general model. But then again, I will go to this. I'm coming from the university sector, and of course, when you talk about radical innovation, the knowledge of this radical innovation could be the source, and at least access to capacity to contribute to this radical innovation could be at universities. And I know that, of course, InnoEnergy and Knut, for example, has worked a lot with universities. So both of you could elaborate a little bit about how to make a good cooperation with university. What are the obstacles and what are the possibilities? So maybe Knut.
Yeah, I can maybe start. I'm also from Gløshaugen and NTNU and worked 10 years as a research scientist at the Institutt for Energy Technology, and I think one of the big advantages we have in Norway is that we have a lot of really good research scientists and technology staff available. And if you also compare the price for that type of resources, it's in fact low if you compare it to US, for example, in Norway. But it is some of the hurdles we see that when we try to establish a good connection is the differences between the market and the R&D activity, because you have to bridge that gap to be able to have a fruitful cooperation. And to do that, you need to bring in the market part as strong as you can, and kind of make sure that you still have the kind of top motivated research scientists available in that context. And that is one of the hurdles and challenges we have worked a lot with in our environment here in Halden since for many years. So it's as I see it, it's all about applied AI, for example. If we focus on AI very much now, and how to really get that AI out in the market. So that it's a gap to bridge in that context.
Yeah, and I'm sure you're.
Yeah. Sorry.
And I'm sure your experience from working, Knut, at NTNU have been very, very useful in order to actually bridge this gap that you are addressing. Yeah. Sorry, Diego.
3 points from my side and one solution. The 3 points, as Knut already mentioned some of them. First, the market side of things is a completely different ball game compared to the university side of things. So the rules that apply are different. And so you did different incentives. That will be my second point. Are today the professors and the researchers incentivized to play on also the market side? Well, some universities like KU Leuven, they have cracked the nut, and that has created a very fruitful market uptake of research results. But incentives is not widely deployed in all universities in Europe. That could be, for me, one, because at the end it's about individuals and people. And you have got incentives, then that helps a lot. The third thing is that professors and researchers need to understand on the market side, the boss is the customer, the boss is the market. So it's not the scientific proficiency or technology proficiency that counts, is the market adoption of a product. And that for professors, for university people, is not easy to accept because, again, it's different rules. And for me, the solution is what we saw today in this panel is the two master students and PhD students. Those are the linking bridges between the innovation that is born into the universities and research centers into the market. They are just breaking the walls, and I'm sure that university will follow systemically by bringing those incentives into the professors.
Great, thank you. Roger, are you satisfied?
Yeah, I think it's good points, and I think, as Diego said, there are different logics going on here, so there's a lot to work on. Yeah.
Could I ask a question for Eva? Because this is a partly audience question, but also I'm adding on a bit, because Diego said the boss is the market. And you, Eva, did in your presentation quote, do not assume what people want, find out what they need. And in this, we're going to add risk. And risk is not always rational. How can we cope with perceived risk, both on the consumer and the producer side?
Well, basically, of course, there's three solutions to risk or lack of trust. There's experience, familiarity, and contract. And we can use all of these. So, for example, I've been working with smart energy solutions here in Finland, and we have discussed, well, Living Lab is one example how to create experience. Giving people the opportunity to try out something without commitment, without putting their entire energy bill into somebody's hand. Simulation is also one way to gain experience. So this is my house, and now I can simulate what happens with this new contract or whatever, how much energy I have available, how much I need to pay for it. Of course, contract then is also important, so we need to have fair contracts, and I agree a lot with Diego that we should not assume that money is the main incentive. It can also be just too confusing. People want a reliable solution, and indeed we have sometimes proposed variable pricing to people. They say, yes, well, I will then get insurance to make sure I do not pay too much. So people will find ways of avoiding financial risks, and so they should not be subjected to them. And then maybe familiarity, so that we have these examples which are similar to me. They are very important. So very often we have these really techie men who are sort of presenting these cool solutions in the media, and we do not have little old ladies like me doing things with technology. So this is one example, because people trust other people who are familiar or similar to them. So to close the chasm or the gap also by bringing the people a little closer to each other can be one of the solutions. I agree that this doesn't answer the entire question. There are risks, and we need to also deploy all our formal capabilities to manage and to make sure that privacy, security of supply, etc., are not compromised at any situation. But these are additional things that we can use to make the marketing and the communication with customers more smoother.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We are, nearly running out of time, so it's time to round up the discussion. And today I would like to challenge our two experts, Marianne and Roger, if you would like to sum up shortly what we've been through today and the role of radical social and technological innovation within the energy transition. Where are we? What are our hopes? What are we getting at? And listening to these four speakers today, what do you think? Are you optimistic? Marianne first, please.
So I can start, yes.
Yes.
Yes, of course I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic. I think that we're touching on all the right items. I also think there's a lot of opportunities. I think the data-driven opportunities that you talked about, Knut, they are here to change the world. I think we use the bold words like, radical innovation and breakthrough innovation. And I wonder how much radical innovation actually we have seen lately. It seems like a lot of it is still quite incremental in this area. And I don't think I've seen very many change business models, really change business models in this area. So I think we are in for a change in the future. I think the prosumers will be increasingly important in this. If you look in Denmark, organic food wave have changed the B2B system. So it's not only B2C. I think probably consumer demand could even do something in a B2B environment. And then I think maybe corporates will go from not only being or merely being investors like you're talking about, Gareth, but maybe also collaborators. So people who will invest into development of something which is truly difficult and co-risk it more than just by giving money. So I think there's a lot of important and interesting development, and I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. So Roger, the final words. Do you agree with Marianne's optimism? You're muted. I don't know why.
I agree. It's been an interesting discussion from different perspectives. So we have touched upon a number of things that it could be interesting to have maybe something of a follow up on how to really do the radical go from what you touched about now, the more incremental to the radical innovation. I think all of you have been into this, but maybe we could dig even deeper into what Diego is doing in his InnoEnergy and how we bring in startups into making this radical shift and the role of governments, because I think we may need some different models in order to support this to happen, so this could happen faster.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you to all four speakers for very interesting presentations and perspectives during the discussion. I totally agree, it's been a very nice discussion. So thanks once again for all of you. You may turn your cameras off and your microphones as well for this time, and I'm going to invite Oskar Thomasgaard, the director of the Energy Transition Initiative at NTNU, to join me for a final comment. There he is in his high-tech office with his very high-tech camera running up and down the table there. Now you're stable. So, Oskar, we've finished 5 webinars, replacing the physical conference that was due to take place in March. Now we're at the end of this year's conference, but what happens next? You're muted. I don't know if you can unmute yourself there. I still can't hear you.
No, is it better?
It was an on and off button you forgot. Yeah, okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, too many buttons in this high-tech office. So, well, tomorrow we will start the planning of next year's Energy Transition Week. And of course, that's something I would regard planning under uncertainty if you look at what happened this year. So in fact, what was this year's Energy Transition Week happened to be an Energy Transition Summer with a sequence of webinars going over the whole summer. I think the webinars were excellent, but and the conference in itself is usually dialogue oriented, and I think we managed to maintain that through excellent discussions and panel discussions over the webinars. But next we have to start planning what's going to happen next year, and we are aiming for April and the Energy Transition Week. But let's see if that will be possible to go through as a physical experiment, or if we have to do something virtual or in between.
Yeah, so we'll just keep track on what you're doing at NTNU, and I wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for this very interesting series of webinars. And I can just repeat that for anyone who would like to see the webinars over again, they are available at your website at the Energy Transition Initiative. So maybe we should just wave together, Oscar, and say goodbye and thank you for this time.
Thank you to all the
Bye-bye,
contributors.
everybody.
It's been fantastic.